Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to the room. Welcome to the Festival of Ideas and the Delights of Football session with Daniel Gray, myself, Alex Gillett, and Kevin Tennent.
Hi, Evan.
A quick introduction then of Daniel. We don't want to hold him up too long with our talking because he's got a lot of interesting things to say. But just to tell you, he's the author of the Delights series of football books. And various books, I mean, the titles are all here. I won't read them all out, but also the homage, or as he says, the homage to Caledonia, not Catalonia, Caledonia. And for a short period in the early 90s, he was the finest left back in his village, once marking Gordon Strachan's youngest son, the one who didn't become a footballer. Successfully marked him out of the game.
True.
It might be why he's not a footballer now after that performance. He's a Middlesbrough supporter and began attending football matches in 1988. So he's a Glory supporter as well because it did very well at that time. A bit like myself, though. That's around about the time I started following them as well. But he's never recovered from that because they haven't had too much glory since then. He's worked in a psychiatric hospital, a library, and also in television and politics. Okay, great stuff.
Not at the same time.
Not at the same time, he says. There's a nice cover slide, which also I think is the cover of one of your books as well, isn't it? Very nice artwork. And he's been described as, I think, the L.S. Lowry of football writing. Is that correct?
Oh, apparently.
Yeah, apparently so. And you can see some similarities in some of the images, books and things. So we, in case you don't know, we have our own website blog that we do from University of York. Myself and Kevin, we work here. It's called Soccer Mad Boffins. That's where we put news of what we're doing and other interesting football-related and football education-related stuff. And Kevin, a few words about the research we do.
Yeah, so we started doing research on football maybe about 12 years ago now, and we've looked at a number of subjects. One of the topics we looked at was the World Cup in England in 1966. We realised that it was approaching the 50th anniversary of England hosting the 1966 World Cup. Everybody knew about what happened at the end of the World Cup, if you like. Everybody knew that England won in the final, but we didn't know much really about how it was organised or anything like that, we found. So we actually found that the government helped to finance it. They started to do things like experiment with merchandising, all these kinds of things. That then led us to this here, which was a bit of research that we did on the World Cup in the US in 1994. So Alex luckily got to go over to Stanford and found out about the ways that very much with no kind of existing kind of soccer infrastructure, if you like, they started from almost nothing in San Francisco and on the West Coast and organised kind of matches from that kind of basis. So here we've got some of the products that you could buy in the US at the time. So you've got, inevitably, because it's the 1990s, you've got some lovely videotapes. You've got kind of sweatshirts, you've got T-shirts. There's also kind of an attempt to kind of milk the sort of perception or exploit the perception that if you're a kind of a soccer fan in America in this period, then you're probably Hispanic. So there should be kind of a Mexico shirt there as well. All these kinds of things. So we thought these kinds of things were fantastic kind of sources, really.
Yeah, and it made us think about what today I think we're broadly calling some of the delights of football. So the things which you get interested in, which aren't necessarily just the game. So the stuff you consume, the things you enjoy, the old videotapes, end of season videotapes, World Cup films, the stickers you can collect, the merchandise you can collect, buy X number of bottles of pop and collect the labels and get a pin badge, all the stuff that we, many of us grew up with and maybe enjoyed as we were getting into football. And Kevin mentioned 1966 as well, and although the Americans get a lot of credit for commercialising things, they did with ticketing especially, really mascotting and merchandising in a big way began in 1966, didn't it, Kevin?
Yeah, so anybody who remembers, looking around the room, there are people of a reasonable age here might remember the old brewery Watney's. So they made these kind of bottles of beer, which were kind of sent around. This is World Cup Willie. Again, anybody who remembers the tournament might remember him. He was, as far as we know, the first mascot in a World Cup. And there are all of these various products, bags, plates, things not really actually got much to do with football, right? But they've all kind of got that sort of club shop ethos of kind of stamping a badge or an emblem or something like that.
And a song, Lonnie Donegan, I think.
And Lonnie Donegan, who had been kind of popular in the late 50s, early 60s, but not so much at the time, really. Also did a song. So there were all these kinds of attempts to kind of tie in, to push it into the media in all of these different ways. But what we also found was that the company that the FA set up to market World Cup Willie went bankrupt at the same time, because how they kind of protected the image rights wasn't as well established at the time, basically. So the copyright laws, that kind of thing, they weren't as well kind of understood, as FIFA got much better at this later on.
And on the pitch, we enjoyed many things. So just to compare the two, I think some of us still enjoy watching, for a laugh, the singer got to take the penalty at the beginning of the 1994 World Cup and fall over and miss, or whatever happened. Diana Ross, I think it was quite amusing clip if you haven't seen it. 1966, of course, England winning, and they think it's all over kind of stuff. It's become part of phrases we all know, popular culture even. I think there's a comedy show named after it, was there? I think
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so it's become part of the language, all this kind of thing. So really, that leads us on to talk about, just very briefly about this, and then I think over to Daniel.
Yeah, so one of the other aspects of football is travel, and when we were doing research at FIFA once, we were handed a file which turned out to be basically a kind of set of travel mementos from Helmut Kaiser, who was the FIFA Secretary General at the time's trip to Northern Ireland and to London for a FIFA meeting. And we just thought this is quite nice, because it's got all of his kinds of, there are things like a whiskey label, there are things like the butter from the hotel. This guy, he kept everything when he travelled. And many people in football have kept scrapbooks of their careers and so on. And this is an incredible kind of memoir. So we've got the kind of, we've got champagne labels, Robertson's Golden Shredder, marmalade, but also signs that he had quite a good time there as well. So there's at least one box of Alka-Seltzer appeared. And this kind of links to the ways that we enjoy football now, in a way, or have done at times as well, because, quite a lot of the time it's not really as much about, or it is about the match, but often it's about what you do around the match as well. And I think that's what Daniel's kind of work speaks to a large extent. So it's not just about the match, it's on the way to the match, it's the kind of the kind of activities around the match, shall we say, all of these kinds of things. We also visited the National Football Museum a few years ago, and also took pictures of ourselves enjoying ourselves around kind of football-themed things as well. So this is when they had a display on football games, including things like Subbue. So again, it's something that it's always kind of inspired a lot of interest far beyond, right, what happens on the pitch. So if you look at what happens on the pitch, it's in some ways it's a fairly simple thing, right? But it's inspired a lot of these kinds of extensions. So okay, so we're going to shut up now and go over to Daniel. But we do have some of his images for you to kind of
While you get that, can I just check my head's not in the way of the screen for people, or do you need me to move over a little bit?
Starting from, yeah.
You want me to move, yeah? No, you can see fine, yeah, great.
Okay,
Thank you.
So starting
Yes,
from
thank you.
I know quite well. But,
I'll stand. I don't know why, but I will. Yes, some of the images are from various matches I've been at in the last 5 or 6 years. I just sent a few over from across various places, various countries and things like that. Well, thanks so much for coming along today, though. I know you haven't got matches to go to, so that's probably one reason why. And sorry about the confusing kick-off time of 3:15 when the main book I'll be reading from is Saturday 3 p.m, but never mind. It was TV. Move for TV, usual thing. You know exactly how it is. Yeah, well, want to read from these books and talk really about the things we do love about the game, and hopefully hear some of yours towards the end as well, your little delights about the game. 10 years ago now, I was in one of those phases you go through as a football fan of being very disillusioned, particularly with the top of the game, with wages and diving, and the FA Cup third round had just been put across 5 or 6 days, and loads of you will feel the same as me, that the FA Cup third round is basically our Christmas after Christmas. It's such a magical thing. And I was in that state, and one day I was in a Wetherspoons in Durham with my little girl, who was, well, must have been 4 then, and good parenting, I'm sure you'll all agree. It was one of these Wetherspoons where, to make it look like a library, make it look cerebral and ignore the people snacking and drinking apple sours, there were these books, all these old books, and so I'd say to my daughter, to entertain her, and okay, bring Daddy a blue book, bring Daddy a red book, a green book. She brought me this one blue book, and I turned it over, looked at the spine. Delight by J.B. Priestley. Now, J.B. Priestley is my favourite writer. Long dead, died in the early 1980s, but for many years I've been trying to read every Priestley book, and there are many, many of them. But my challenge is I can't order them online. I've got to just find them in bookshops and things, so I've come to a bit of a pause on that one. But I'd never heard of this. And Priestley wrote Delight just after World War II, and the times of rationing and austerity and all of the rest. And over about 140 or so little essays, he just talks about the things that are still palatable, still enjoyable about life in those circumstances. Things like smoking a pipe in bed. Things like annoying a civil servant. So some are of the time and some aren't. One of them actually is the sound of a football, which is a really lovely one. And so this book fit beautifully into my wife's handbag. I don't think it's fine. That Tim guy, I'll never miss it. He's got loads of money. I live up in Scotland now, and on the train back, I just started revelling in the typically beautiful Priestley prose. But I thought, well, what do I still love about my thing? Football. And actually physically began to write a list on the back of a receipt on the train back of all these different things. And I thought, actually, I'm still besotted with this game. I've just lost my love for what it is at the top. I wrote a few of them up. The very first one, funnily enough, which I won't read from today, is called Seeing a Ground from the Train, because that was an obvious one to write. But it was obvious to me that I was still in love with this game, and I wrote a couple of them up, sent them to the publisher, and they commissioned what became Saturday 3pm. And what's been lovely in the 9 or so years since those books have come out is people sharing them and sharing this delight, because often when you write these things you think, am I going a bit mad about these things? Is it just me? And there's a real universality to these things. But the first thing I wanted to read from today was that you mentioned I'm a Middlesbrough fan, absolutely right. Both of us born in Stockton on Tees, and I spent the first few years of my life on Teesside, and I spend much of it now. I still have my season ticket. But we moved to Cotmanthorpe when I was 4 or 5. And the very first football I played was in our street, and brilliantly today Mr. Cleland is here somewhere in the audience with his grandsons. There he is. And I haven't seen you since you moved away in the early 1990s, so I used to muck about with Kev, who's one of your sons, and this was our theatre of dreams of this street, Suter Close, big conifer bushes to smack the ball into. And I'll read from this book, which is more of a nostalgic book than the others, because this book so first of all I'm going to read from Black Boots and Football Pinks, which was the second in this series. This is more about things that have generally disappeared from the game, but this one's apt because you're here. And what you don't know is slightly after you, in my head, don't correct it with proper history or anything, but slightly after you moved out, your house was unoccupied for a while, I'm convinced in my head. And when the ball went onto your front garden after you'd moved out, we were allowed to do anything to each other, like punch each other, all pile on, and it was called the Arthur Fowler Zone. I just remember it so well. But I'm convinced as well, and you might say this, that I learnt about the back pass rule in your house from a CFAX story. Well, they changed the back pass rule. So this one is called Kids Playing in the Street, and it's inspired by that street, which is called Suter Close in Cotmanthorpe. And my mum, who's also here, appears as a ghostly figure in this. Even though it's not about me, it is. It was a tender symphony of the tarmac. First you heard the thuds strafing the air in a miscellany of notes. A scuttling sound, meaning a pass delivered at pace across the ground. Ever-decreasing pauses between the ball's bounce, a street Morse code for wayward shot. A slapping noise, like an oar dropped in a lake, signifying a shot on goal with laces through the ball. Then, the unmistakable thwack of that ball hitting the side of a car, the sea lapping a boat hull. This divine instrumental was not all that could be heard. In accompaniment were carefree hollers and outraged howls, desperate pleas to receive a pass, cries of foul and handball, and ecstatic cheers when a goal was scored. In that moment, nothing else mattered to both ragtag teams in their kits of scuffed trainers, jeans or tracksuit bottoms, t-shirts and jumpers. On suburban street and in village cul-de-sac, players were lost within a primitive, wild and exultant version of football. If you heard it but were not involved, it was a call to prayer. With street furniture their props, they were shaping chronicles and writing scripts with their feet. Some pronounced them through self-commentaries. Street lamps became floodlights and Leylandi were transformed into swaying crowds. The curb was another defender to beat, the grip bin perfect for a slick 1-2. It was possible to make a goal from almost anything. Those same bushes and lampposts, a panel or a fencing or a gate, a chalked garage wall, some handily placed hydrangea, a fire hydrant stone and a street sign, discarded or liberated traffic cones or drain pipes. The street play was creative, an impromptu architect. When he declared that here to there was a goal, it became just that, a territory marked and a rule applied and instinctively understood by all who showed up to kick and dream. Finding a willing goalkeeper, however, was another matter. These same surroundings would slow the game too. A volley could easily spiral over a garden fence, requiring a polite knock of the door or a swift foot up and a heave over the barricade. Or it could become jammed in a tree, meaning the hurling upwards of any nearby missile from tennis ball to breeze block. Worst of all, the ball would become lodged underneath a parked car, meaning use of the crab football position to dislodge it with feet. Hack, prod, hack. Nearly, then free at last. There were other perils, a ball punctured by a rosebush, a grazed and gritty kneecap, a greenhouse shattered, a hanging basket cudgelled like a piñata. No provoked and irate neighbour could stop a game for long though. After all, there was no kick-off time and games had no fixed duration. You did not have to wait long for another match to begin. This kind of football was played on a loop. Neither did it stop when the dreaded appearance of a parent, a ghost in the fog, beckoned you, the star centre forward in for tea, or worse still, bedtime. The game would rumble on through sausage and chips and still be there afterwards. The real horror was hearing that tarmac symphony behind the curtains as you laid in bed. That felt as if you were being buried alive. Though the footballs used sometimes burst at the seams to reveal a bulbous orange gut, and the hard streets made for berserk bounces, what goals we scored, what mazy dribbles we executed and half volleys we bulldozed into the goal. Through headers and volleys and rush goalies, Wembley doubles and 17 asides, we were stars beneath the streetlights, and the next goal was always the winner. I've got a little set list here. I really have written York set list on the top because it'll be the first time since I've had a set list in York since my band played Fibbers in 1999. So it's a great moment. R.I.P. Fibbers. At the moment, you're probably at that stage where for a couple of weeks you were thinking, not missing football too much, get a bit of stuff done, be like a normal person for a bit, exist again, see my partner maybe. But by now you're probably already craving it a bit. So the next thing to look forward to, I think, is getting the fixture list in a couple of weeks. So this delight is called getting the fixture list. The 30 days of June and the 31 of July. In an odd year they drag, time is gloopy. Summer is about staging posts. Players are freed and loanees go home. News of the pitch being reseeded or season ticket numbers being up. Early transfer rumours, pre-season friendlies announced. Then, just before new signings, the return to training and remembering how beige pre-season friendlies are, arrives fixtures day. To some of us, it is as significant as 100 sainted bank holidays or anniversaries. In dark summers, the new fixture list is a lasso cast towards golden August, snaring it closer. Our partners for that summertime dance matter to an extent they wouldn't at any other time of the season. Who have you got first? We're able to plot far beyond that day too. The fixture list is a map, allowing us to see where we will be in 5 or 8 months, and perhaps even what mood we'll be in at a specific time of day in February. As we peruse this menu of the 9 months ahead, we will pick out certain defeats and tally up points totals. It may even be possible to identify the exact April fixture at which promotion will be squandered. There will be matches to look out for, birthday and Christmas fixtures, derby ties, fancied away trips, and the panic-inducing realisation that a cousin's wedding clashes with a home game. The list is full of innocence in its blank state now, and there is anticipation in imagining it later, daubed in plot and detail. Though probably first seen on a phone or computer screen, the fixtures only really come true when read on paper. Home games are bold, as if they matter more, away ones emaciated. Opposition names are evocative. Reading them in one go twice over is rhythmic, like listening to a poem about disappeared rural railway stations. There are surprise names that can strike up warm sentimentality, a long-forgotten old flame of a team returned to your division via unlikely promotion. These fixtures are delectable when first released, and then all over again as they appear in different forms. The grid with teams on the X and Y axes, and dates in tiny boxes. The official card picked up in the club shop, the statistics pages of the programme. Everything is brand new. All is forgiven, and names on a list represent what's possible. The release of the fixtures is a reassurance that yes, football is coming back and life will begin again. It's quite dated already with the idea of things being printed, but never mind. Some of them still are. When those days come back, I know that a lot of you in the room will have your rituals, some selling fanzines and some in the pub. So this is about pre-match routines. There is a different feeling when you wake up on a match day. It's not just a weekend thing. Your day is sparkling with promise and purpose, which is too rare. Even if you're expecting another defeat in a foul season, you still have the consolation of a pre-match routine. Until 3 o'clock, you are in control. This is your ritual. It has probably taken a long time to perfect, and there is perhaps an undercurrent of superstition that any statistical analysis would undermine. Early in the day, clothing might be important. I wore the same boxer shorts to all Middlesbrough home matches between 1995 and 1998, in which time we were promoted twice, relegated once and lost 3 cup finals. I did wash them in between, I didn't put that bit. Didn't you, Mum? Did you? Yeah, thanks. Then the morning must be filled with the match day habit. A walk to the shop for a paper. A chat with the newsagent about the coming defeat you can feel in your bones. You say this only to absolutely guarantee victory. A bacon sandwich in the usual cafe with ketchup falling onto the fixture list you're studying. That morning is merely a support act. When noon ticks close, the real day begins. This means taking the usual transport at the usual time into town. Or, if you're one of those people I feel disproportionately jealous of, you live within walking distance of your team's ground and can saunter there like some blessed L.S. Lowry character in modern shoes. Still though, you'll use the customary route to the pub. In that pub, the bust-in, the hand-delivered by train and the Lowry strollers meet. It has to be the normal boozer, even if it isn't quite the same since that new landlord took over. You probably don't drink here at times other than match days, and so the bar staff and your fellow denizens are fortnightly acquaintances. Not quite friends, but on nodding terms. You'll be meeting the usual few, dads, aunties, best mates or football mates, your conversation swaying between poorly children and lone strikers. Then the walk to the ground. Same time, same route, same speed, same programme, fanzine or lotto ticket seller. Same laugh at the odd-looking fella selling pin badges. Same story about the time you got food poisoning from that burger van. Same turnstile, same stairway, same shuffle along the seats or to your place on the terrace, if you're lucky in that way. And same hellos to yet more fortnightly pals. Then kick-off comes and you lose control of things. This may be very different to your pre-match routine. You may go straight to the ground. You may even watch your team completely sober, making you a stronger person than me. As life changes, so do these customs. That gloomy pub is no good for the sun you need to bring to games now. A concerned medical opinion kiboshes a 2.45 cheeseburger with onions. Whatever your order of service, there is comfort in known faces and the performing of ritual, and bliss in the thought that football is about so much more than the match. Looking forward to August already now, aren't we? I can smell the burgers sizzling from here. Or is that just the canteen? I'm a fan of floodlights. I didn't get the dress code messages I meant to say to you. It's just scruffy git all the time and
Sports casual.
And sports casuals. So this one, funnily enough, is called Floodlights. They are merely lamps in the sky, and yet they turn football into a fairy tale. Floodlights say once upon a time and sprinkle upon their surroundings an otherworldly sheen. Walking towards them on some winter Tuesday night puts you under a spell, renders you as simple as a moth, calls you to prayer. They are the light at the end of the tunnel. Floodlights transform everyday streets into something else altogether. They fling an ivory shroud of reflection across tiles and bricks, making Victorian terraces into film sets. All fulgent roads lead to the ground, that neon alien ship to which we swarm like 20,000 ETs going home. Roll up, for here is glamour, showbiz, theatre, and tonight, whoever the team and whatever its fortunes, this is the only ticket in town. If that outer ground pageant no longer survives everywhere, then what happens next does. You push the turnstile, and soon the radiant green of the pitch tickles your eyes. In comparison to a match in daylight, senses are heightened. The crowd seems louder, the air closer, burger stands more fragrant. It can even happen in daytime once the clocks have gone back. A Saturday 3 p.m. game that kicks off as a bright autumn day and ends under the floodlights, groggily turned on midway through the second half like last year's Christmas tree bulbs. On those days do you realise that the season has really begun, that the league table may not be lying. No season is fully alive until you've glanced upwards and watched arrows of electrified rain darting through a floodlight's glow. It's obvious to say that the greatest floodlights are of the classical type. 4 pillars marking each corner, concrete plinths, iron pylons, and a rectangle of a dozen or so bulbs. When observed on a town's landscape, it's this kind of floodlight that can make you sigh happily, and this kind of floodlight which may be used instead of a map to locate a ground new to you. Yet all types have charm and pull. I have a particular fondness for lights attached to the roofs of stands which remind me of the lamps on miners' helmets. They also fail more dramatically, almost in sequence. On the rare occasion that now happens, standard required response, "Someone's forgotten to put 50p in the meter." It seems a shame, however, to even approach being technical or specific about floodlights. Their genius is in the crackle they create, the sense of expectation they rouse. Football under the lights. Evocative words of magic and wonder, like Christmas Eve and Seaside Town. Now I can't wait for winter now, can we? Just me. This one's moving on to match time, and I'd love to hear afterwards if this has happened to any of you. It's called When the Ball Goes in the Crowd. It's coming your way. It's coming your way. It's coming your way. Oh, but it lands just short, a few rows down and 5 or 6 seats across. The supporter who catches it does so perfectly and casts it pitchward with a meaty, assured throw. Those around him pat his back and cheer. You ponder that in any case the ball would probably have smashed into your face and that you're not even sure you can throw it that far. The ball sails into the stands with the unpredictability of a comet. Being behind the goal during the warm-up increases your chances of receiving it, but in tandem, your chances of being concussed by it. When a wayward shot jolts into the stand during the match, there is just time for a jeer before it is parried around and returned, or in the odd away end concealed beneath a jumper until killjoy stewards retrieve it, luminous trading standards officers seizing counterfeit. The finest specimen of the ball going into the crowd, though, is when a clearance, often by a goalkeeper, floats into a stand by the touchline. It allows a juvenile, communal thrill to build. For a moment, you're all back playing past the parcel and feel that your turn is coming. In this instance, there is too more time for the shared hope of contact to ferment, more time for reactions to be considered. When it reaches the stand, the lesser pace of the ball can mean clean catches and, on rare, golden occasions, headers. Cue chants of sign him on, sign him on, sign him on. There are caveats which are seductive distractions in themselves. When the ball rattles around empty seats and a ball boy has to pogo the advertising hoarding to retrieve it, and when it leaves the stadium altogether. Making a leap of consciousness, the latter gives you time to reminisce of childhood hours wasted trying to retrieve footballs. This phenomenon pokes a hole in football's fourth wall. For a brief moment, the barrier between being part of the game and watching it tumbles. A fullback has to make eye contact with the child in the second row trying to return the ball because he needs to take a throw and push his team towards an equaliser. Suddenly, the fan is a figment of the action and we'll remember those 15 seconds until grey and wistful. What time am I? This might be familiar to some of you in the room, I think, especially as wedding season begins. It's called striking up a football conversation on a social occasion. If friends or relatives are unworldly enough to get married before the end of May, Your fellow travellers are easy to detect. As 3 o'clock comes and goes, they will be mauling their pockets for mobile phones, taking shifty looks at them during the endless parade of wedding photographs, then full-on glances as the father of the bride makes his speech. Later, when images of the wedding surface, they can be recognised surly in the background. It may appear as if they are jealous that they should be marrying bride or groom. Actually, they have just received a text which says, "Lost 2-1, love Dad." The score must be known no matter who is offended. Things are more difficult in June and July. Unless you can strike lucky while sidling along the evening buffet and verbalising an unlikely link between Sheffield United and couscous, everything is clandestine, everyone undercover. The surest way in is by asking a stranger where they're from and moving things quickly to the local football club. The code word for bringing this speed date to an abrupt end are, "Yeah, I'm not really into football." When a match is made, romance is sudden. The words, "season ticket for 27 years, dirty talk." You're in. Whatever the month, the moment of connection is delicious. There you are, 1 minute strangers, the next discussing a former right-back's cruciate ligament. It works everywhere, a profound demonstration of football's universality. You can have nothing in common and suddenly everything. The cake is being cut, but you have away day memories to trudge through. The first dance is barely seen, as one of you remembers a bald centre midfielder that played for both of your clubs. It makes the many long pauses of a wedding day drift away unnoticed. Midnight comes, and you go your own ways, ending a romance within a romance. So I was still delighted by football at this stage, so I did a third book, that and having a mortgage to pay. When you're asked about writing motivation, no writer dares really say that. What made you want to write this book? Money? No, absolutely not. The list was up to about 130 by this point. I've still got a fair few. I could maybe churn another one out. But what spurred me on writing the first one and the second one was that contact with people. For instance, on many Saturdays, I would always be getting someone a picture of a train as they went past, say, Wraith Rovers on that line up there or something, and people sharing their different delights. Or if suddenly an outfield player was in goal, about 10 different people would send me it on Twitter, and I just thought, this is really something, sharing this delight, which is the purpose of today, of course. So this one is a very nasty one. It's called The Referee Falling Over. Any referees and any officials in the room? Oh, sorry. I've just seen the T-shirt now. I'm sorry, this is dedicated to you. His T-shirt says referees are people too. I do say that. They'll get me out. If it's possible to characterise football supporters' relationship with referees in one word, then that word is frosty. In theory, the official, unbiddable, aloof, offering no favour to any team, should be respected. He or she is there to enable our game, to make it safe and proper. Without the referee, there would be no football. And yet, when a referee falls over, it is outrageously, universally funny. This comic offering is base and slapstick. A man falling over would struggle to muster much more than a titter on a cinema screen. In the street, we may try and help him up. However, it makes a football crowd jollier than Santa on laughing gas. The glee taken from a referee falling over derives from his status as an authority figure. It chimes with the same instinct that drove us to snigger when a puce-faced deputy headmaster's voice creaked high during a telling off, or when a flob of parental spittle landed on a friend being scolded by his dad. Here is a politician being egged, a policeman's helmet falling off, and news of a dullard, car-obsessed neighbourhood watch convener putting diesel in his petrol tank, all rolled into one. There is a sense of the haughty and the self-satisfied having their egos pricked. They have, in the finest tradition, been taken down a peg or two. The ungainly physique of many referees enriches this delight. It embellishes their tumbles just as giant shoes aid a clown. The stubby ref who runs like a squirrel harbouring a chestnut, or the gangly specimen for whom arm folding is an origami move, have inherent comic timing. Perfection resides in the fact that so many of these gawky referees are running backwards when they fall. Usually, they have just awarded a free kick and must now retreat from the scene, one arm raised like a harassed tour guide. There is then a mild stumble, which ripens into a heavy plunge, and unavoidably and irresistibly, the referee is over, backside to turf, as if in mimed homage to the toppling of a hated dictator's statue. The referee descends with the finesse of a new pilot attempting to land during a Hebridean squall. We in the stands cheer, jeer, and hurrah like bingo grannies watching a striptease act. Laughter, studio sitcom laughter, then works its way through blocks and rows, a brutal Mexican wave. A referee may also plummet upon being hit by the ball. There is usually reserved admiration for the ref who niftily ducks or jumps over a footballer's pass, even if he does resemble a weird kid leapfrogging on his own. Too much theatricality, however, and that official is more likely to be slapped by the ball. He falls as if thunderstruck between the shoulder blades by Thor himself. The referee stands and shoos imaginary dust from his uniform. Soon the moment drifts away, and our jester has the whistle between his lips, between his teeth once more, as if nothing ever happened. But we know that it did. Sorry. The last delight I was going to read was going to be being one called Being in an Empty Ground, but instead I thought I'd read a practical example of that from another book. The Silence of the Stands is about a book about football during COVID, so managing to go to games in the bits when it was allowed for a bit and then not, and I've been lucky enough to be able to have a press pass and go to games behind closed doors and things. It's all about that year. And when we were finally allowed to come back, as I said, I live in Edinburgh now, so to come back and see my mum, I also went to see another old girl, Bootham Crescent. As mentioned, Middlesbrough were always my first love, but there was a great set of seasons in the 90s where I could go to both. The home games were that way around, so I was at Bootham Crescent one week, Ayrsham or the Riverside. So I was at an awful lot of of what I considered our heyday of, beating Manchester City on December the 19th, 1998, and all of those, and the great pitch invasion. So I'm deeply, deeply in love with Bootham Crescent to the extent that I have a turnstile in my garden. At the point of writing this, I didn't know that I'd be buying that. So this is leaving my mum's on Bishopthorpe Road and walked across town to go and see the old girl one last time. With the Minster bells at my back, I walked the same old route for the very last time, out of the embrace of the York walls and along Bootham. Blossom trees bled confetti petals on handsome Grosvenor Street, always an unlikely football thoroughfare with its 3-storey villas and B&Bs. It was from here that you would first hear match day, indistinct tannoy rasps and bursts of "We are York" and "Oh to be" from the terraces of the David Longhurst stand. Those sounds would quicken the pace of the people around you, as if they were workers scuttling towards the factory bell. At the end of Grosvenor, other supporters would flow down from what many older fans called the Monkey Bridge, quickly negotiating its steps with their hands in their pockets, then looking up to find that Bootham Crescent was now in view. They would walk past a queue of us younger fans waiting to buy pop and sweets at the newsagent on the corner. That shop was now bricked up, the first act of erasure among the coming many. A glance down the back-to-backs of Newborough Street flashed recall of Tony's place, a glowing chippy it was possible to visit at half-time by collecting a pass-out chit from a steward. From there, we'd looked towards the gates of Bootham Crescent and melted into the matchday whirlpool. Now the ground had been stripped of its signs, unscrewed or claw-hammered and then auctioned to fans. With faded squares and rectangles where directions, gate prices and codes of conduct had been displayed, it looked as if the place had been suddenly censored. Behind the away end, where Budlear leaned over the perimeter wall like misbehaving fans, I ran my hand down a turnstile door frame and paint peeled away. Hours later, red and blue fragments remained in my fingernails. The club shop resembled any other empty retail unit, with no trace of besotted post-game moments when cash had been parted with for anything that said York City on it. 2 men moved cardboard boxes from the programme shop to a car boot. I asked where their contents were going. "Tip, I'm afraid, son," came the reply. We chatted for a while about programmes, about York City and Bootham Crescent, and about the £1 programme bundles I used to buy from them in my teens. I can't think why I never had a girlfriend. They gave me another pile now, for all time's sake. By the main stand, near to the door we would wait outside for player autographs, was a heap of flags, banners and poles, extracted from the stands and left for dead. Beyond them, 2 men in club apparel were heaving rows of plastic seats into a van. The wide double-door gate into the ground behind them was open. "Excuse me," I said, possibly in the voice of a child asking to see Santa. "Can I go in?" Without looking up, the older of the 2 men replied, "Aye, if you're careful." This magic house unfurled before me. I stood first behind the goal in the Longhurst stand, recalling aloft arms and kids stretching on tiptoes to see the action on glory nights. Pigeons cooed rowdily and the grass was long and unkempt, but it remained possible to trick ears into hearing the sounds of yesterday, and to look to the pitch and see bygone happenings, or at the columns of crush barriers around me and rekindle faces from a quarter of a century ago. The men drove their van across it, and the smell of diesel momentarily stopped my being homesick for the past. At the back of the stand, the snack bar shutter was bolted forever, its meal deal signs intact. Never again would anyone choose any pie with any hot or soft drink for £5.50. Many advertising hoardings had been removed, which regressed the look of some parts of the ground even further back than I remembered. Elsewhere, the peeling away of modern adverts had unveiled older boards. There was one for York City Club Call and another for Warner Brothers' new cinema in an out-of-town retail park, which was, as I recall it, the most exciting thing to happen in 1990 apart from the World Cup. Moss advanced up breeze block walls like storm clouds on a television weather map, and I began to wonder if seeing, and in future recalling, the dear old place in this state was such a good idea. Here I was, though, and only in this instant could I snoop inside the decomposing wooden hut where supporters would pay £1 to transfer into the seats of the popular stand, or sneak beneath that same enclosure to look at the long access tunnel which had been used as an air raid shelter in the war. Without paying my £1, I continued on and into the pop, with its alphabet steps denoting rows now gagged and smothered by dandelions and other trespassing weeds. Inside a unit cupboard, a meter box, used to record how many people had paid their money and passed through, remained stuck on 11. A few blocks on, the 2 men removed further rows of seats. They'd been reserved by clubs in Birtley, Penistone, Galashiels and Warrington. With so many parts of the ground sold off and sent around the country, there would be corners of fields that were forever Bootham Crescent, a scattering of the ashes. I looked across to the main stand, now robbed barren and flashing a boxer's tooth-scarce grin, most of its wooden seats in living rooms and elsewhere, including mine. Moving close up brought sight of that area's internal organs, its concrete steps, nuts and bolts and shady warrens. Today, it was possible to see the inner workings of Bootham Crescent through its slow destruction, an intriguing but grim encounter. I stood at the players' tunnel looking outwards, a vantage I'd only had once before when selected as a matchday ball boy aged 13. Such is the way this game lands the adult back in smaller shoes. Pushing at slender doors, I found discarded sports equipment and a long-forgotten W.T. Ellison turnstile, its counter abandoned at 50,185. Back by the pitch, a blackbird pecked at the cleft which once hosted a corner flag's pole, and 1,000 stud marks remained, the fossils of linesmen and substitutes. For a while I rested on a crush barrier in the away end, looking out and wondering how many thousands of people down the years had called this place home. Now the clocks had stopped and I was standing in a memory. I walked along the fading touchline, reached the corner and had one last look around. Outside, the alderman asked, "You all done, son?" I said I was, but he probably knew that much by the tears in my eyes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. That's
Very good. Yeah.
What I didn't talk about in that ball buy, because there'll be surely someone else in the room that was once a ball buy at Bootham Crescent, that when you had to run into the centre circle in those big blue uniforms they put you in that didn't fit you, you all had to wave at each stand, and all the Dave Longhurst doing that at you. All That's what I was really thinking about.
Brilliant. Well, I think we've got time for a few questions. If anyone would like to ask a question to the author.
Can I ask the referee if you've ever fallen over or been hit by the ball?
Once or twice.
we've got a couple of questions around. Do you want to maybe start with the lad and then go over there?
What was your first big ground that you went to? So like top division ground?
Oh, Ayresome Park. It's a good question. I suppose Wembley at 25th of March 1990. I went to see Middlesbrough lose 1-0 in the Zenith Data Systems Cup. Look it up. Big trophy. It was bigger than the Champions League, young Cleland, I tell you.
I played brilliantly that day.
But I remember, because it was the old Wembley had half seats with no backs and not enough toilets because people were going to the toilet all over, weren't they? And you know, it's easy to be nostalgic about old football, but I remember an awful lot of bad things as well. And that day, I remember I was 8 years old and there was a huge riot after. And I've still got, I picked up a flag off, Dad wouldn't buy me a flag, but I picked one up off the floor that I've still got. It's got a big Doc Martin boot print in it. But yes, probably the big Wembley. And then here I used to go to the soccer schools that they did at the old sixth form college, and at the end of the week, with Gordon Staniford, who a lot of you will know, and at the end of the week they used to take you on a trip. So I remember going to Elland Road and Hillsborough through that on a little minibus. What about you? What's the biggest one you've been to?
So my biggest, I went to the Metropolitano in Madrid. And
Amazing.
My first properly big ground was that we went to an FA Cup tie to Stevenage v Aston Villa, and that was at Villa Park.
Oh, amazing. Oh, brilliant.
Oh, nice.
Oh, superb.
Thank you. There was a gentleman over there asked a question.
Very interesting, by the way, very enjoyable. This losing love of the game is something I've gone through, you know, you go through periods. But, you know, there's certain characters and... There's certain... Oh, that's much better. There's certain characters and organisations which are trying to... Well, they're ruining the game. They're greedy. They're money. You know this better than I do, possibly. Or you certainly be able to theorise about it. But you know, it's really squeezing the golden goose. You know, this ridiculous World Club Cup challenge coming up when players should be resting and counting the money and laying on the beach until they start again.
Yeah.
But you know, this what you've said and what everybody no doubt, it's keeping hold of the things that connect you to why you bother going.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a Leeds fan. My dad took me in '73. It was our local club, and you just stay with it. Most people stay with whatever club, and there's ups and downs. And I've seen some unpleasant things and heard a few unpleasant things over the years. But you sort of have. Well, I think put that to the side and concentrate on the positives. Because there's such a lot of wonderful things about the game. Whoever you support, whichever team you follow.
I think that's right, and I think there are at least two different versions of the game now, aren't there? There's the people that are very much interested in transfers, tactics, money, and all of the rest, and then there are those of us that are interested in pies and things. No, it's easy to say pies, and that's such a stereotype. But I just mean there are match-going fans and non-match-going fans, and that's how I would probably characterise it. And, a very common thing, and to the extent that it might be patronising for proper non-league fans, like some North Ferriby fans from the fanzine there at the back, is those of us that support teams higher up the chain going back to non-league and finding our love again. And that's a very common thing now. It's probably getting quite annoying for actual non-league fans, I think. But that is the restorative thing always when, ignore this, whatever this stupid thing is this summer. I don't even really know anything about it. It's the awful thing is people that are being polite to you that know you like football will ask you about that level of football. I didn't even know who was in the Champions League final last week. No idea. I haven't seen that competition since it was on ITV. So there's so many different types of football, but from the outside it all looks the same, and you think, no, not. These pictures are indicative of that for me because I go to a lot of Scottish football now, and the authenticity of it and all of those words is absolute still because there's no money there.
Try and work your way along the road. That guy there.
I was just going to follow that up, Daniel, which was obviously you reside in Scotland now as largely English. What would be the one ground you'd sort of propose as a pilgrimage to take in Scotland?
Greenock Morton, Capello, wonderful place. Just the most original football ground you'll go to, all four sides, and then it's got the ship cranes behind and the sugar sheds from the old industry, so it's right where a football ground should be among its industry and its backstory. And not many Scottish football away fans would agree with me because it's also got an open an open away end with wooden benches. But I think it's magical.
I think York had that as well, didn't it?
Yeah. Put the away fans in there. I agree with that.
But if you were there with a smaller club, though, you would get put in one of the. So you could if you.
Yeah.
It depended if you were. Yeah.
You get put in the cowshed, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
As it's
you get
called.
put-
Yeah.
yeah.
But I'd recommend that. And Ayr United Somerset Park would be second for that.
Oh, yeah.
What about the hedge at the...
Fantastic, yeah. There's plenty to do there. Again, it really does come down to the fact that in Scotland they didn't have as much money to move into so many out-of-town featureless stadiums, really. But yeah, I recommend that. And a macaroni pie. They're coming together of two cultures.
I watched quite a lot of football on television this year, but I've also watched York City a lot.
Yeah,
And I know what sort of football I'd rather watch,
yeah,
and that's York City.
yeah, absolutely.
Because the way they've played this year puts the football on television to shame.
Yeah, definitely some of the best.
Normally,
I think.
and what a shame that going second in the league and they can't get
No,
promoted.
it's awful, as we know.
You know.
Yeah, I was at the Oldham game. It's
Yeah, I was.
just about over it, but it's really interesting watching York from afar. I get kept up to date with Y-Front fanzine and the commentaries from David Ward, and it's what's interesting to me as a Bootham Crescent lover. That at first I thought I'm never going to that new place, but of course you have to. It's coming back only sporadically, but seeing the size of the crowds there and the amount of young people there. I was going to say young lads, but plenty of lasses there as well, and really interesting. So if I'm on try and tell them about my turnstile, they're not that interested. So, and funnily enough, and you need that. A club need, that's it's really healthy. That really pleases me, because there'd be times, admittedly I used to go to a lot of obscure games like the auto windscreens against Mansfield on a Tuesday night at Bootham Crescent, but there'd be times when there was 1,500 of you there, and so to see that is amazing, really, I think. So next season, there's always next season, isn't there?
Right, we're the lady sort of 2 rows in there. Yeah, I don't know if there's anyone. We should probably try and find someone this side as well.
Who's the guy over there as well?
Oh, thank you for the readings.
Oh, thank
I found it really poetic. It was lovely. I'm not actually a huge football fan. Sorry, I'm here with my.
But are you now?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's just my husband, but he has a real problem with hating another local team. And so the lovely young lad who talked about Villa Park, he bristled. He's a blues. Is it a common thing? So, you can support teams anywhere. We're about to become grandparents, and the first thing he did was look up, I'll be taking them to see York. He's never supported York, but suddenly he's following them. And so is it a general thing, and why do people have such a hatred of the other local team, or is it just him?
No, I think it's. But is it? It's certainly a universal football thing. I think it varies in extent, doesn't it? Really, I live near one of the most horrible sides of that, with Celtic and Rangers, that goes into all sorts of other areas. But a healthy rivalry, I suppose. We've gone through it this season as Middlesbrough fans. Sunderland up in the last minute of the playoffs, Leeds champions, Newcastle win a trophy for the first time since television was invented, and that. But I kept thinking, well, York are going to go up because of this. There's got to be something good about this season. So yeah, it definitely affects your mood what the other ones do. But it depends. I think it depends. As I've got older, I felt it less, I suppose. I'm just more bothered about my own teams. But yeah, I think it's definitely. Yeah, he's not alone. Don't worry about him.
Guy over there with his hand up.
Yeah.
So, in your opinion, what ground does the best pie?
Well, I haven't eaten. I eat fish and chips. I wrote a book about it, but I haven't eaten meat for years and years. So it's still macaroni pies all the way for me. So it's about circumstance, I suppose. And so I would be at Capulo, Green at Morton, and I've learnt from the Scots this amazing, because their pies are more like a different out of the short crust, this amazing technique of putting brown sauce in the middle, which they can do with one hand like this. I've watched them. So it'd be that kind of occasion. But the change in football and food's really, really interesting. I was asked to be on the food programme recently on Radio 4 to talk about that, about the fact that all sorts of grounds you can get street food and all of the rest. So it's really interesting to see where we go from here. And it's actually probably my biggest complaint about the LNER Stadium is the price and all of the rest, but that's out of the club's hands, and it's for a different session. fudged that answer because I haven't eaten many pies lately.
Should go to Forest Green now.
Yes, true, yeah. Don't talk about it.
One of the delights of football, for me, has gone out of the game, which I follow a big club, and it's VAR.
Yeah.
A lot of people here, smaller clubs, you don't have that problem. But when that ball goes in the net, the wonderful joy you experience has often gone because you waited a long time and you can't celebrate.
No,
Still, the referee does that. I mean, the word swings and roundabouts, you'll get some decisions, you won't get others. So for me, VAR, you can forget it.
Yeah, it's a hideous distortion, isn't it? They're very talk about all these things that surround the game and before the game and after and all of that sense of belonging to a club and things, but actually the very, very moment of your team scoring is for me the happiest I'll be that week, and it is everything leads up to that incandescent 20 seconds, and I've only experienced it once when Borough were at Old Trafford, and I'd forgot we had it actually, but in general it's another reason I'm not bothered about getting promoted, which is just as well because we're rubbish.
we can focus on the cup.
But yeah, it's robbed so much, and to say that one of the argument was for clearing things up, well, match of the day, at least if you added it up, it's probably at least 8 minutes every week of them talking about it more than ever, and just boring. So we've ended on a thing we hate about football. That was good.
One more.
What would you say is the most picturesque ground that you've seen in Scotland so far?
Oh, up there. I suppose it's about views from the ground, isn't it? And it used to be, I would say, Hibs or Hearts, because from Hibs you could see all of the hills before they'd made it into a boring old seater. And ones like Alloa, thinking about it, you could see the hills there, the Oak Hill. Yeah. So yeah, there's plenty actually.
The Barton is a good one.
Yeah, with the rock. Yeah, because it's a lovely thing, isn't it? Stranraer's good when you used to see the ferries, that's similar to Grimsby seeing boats, and that I actually one that's come to my mind is Dunfermline. There's a massive cemetery behind it, and it's endlessly interesting to think the game might be rubbish, but at least I'm not over there putting flowers on the graves. But there's loads actually. It's a good question.
Maybe not. Yeah, squeeze one last in before.
Hiya. One last question. I have a mate who genuinely has a thing about hexagonal goal netting. And it's his favourite type of goal netting, and he swears blind that when the ball enters the net, it swizzles in a different kind of sound when it hits the net compared with other goal netting. So, given the image you've shown of the goal netting at what appear to be a Scottish or non-league ground, I have to ask you what your favourite kind of goal netting is.
Brilliant. Well, luckily, there's a chapter about goal nets in Black Boots Football Pinks. There is about but mine would, the thing in there is about how they've become so homogenised, and it's very depressing. And for instance, Ayresome Park, we had different nets at each. We had a narrow one at the Holgate and a bigger stand. Yes, but it's the loop at the moment. It would be the loop stanchions where it's possible for that.
Is that part of the netting, or is that part of the goal structure?
Part of the structure. Yeah, Sabutio goals basically, but a very narrow net, so the ball really thunders through it like that. But I agree with your mate. Different sound, different twirl. Brilliant.
It's the interaction. The interaction between net and structure, I think.
Yes, and that moment that television does sometimes capture of the very brief second as ball hits net is a beautiful sound. Oh, now you this is X-rated stuff, God. Post watershed. Red hot. Oh yes.
Yeah. I chose that one because I thought it was kind of
That's at Kendall, that versus my old team, Tad Albion, who I used to play for. So yeah, that was just an in-betweeny COVID game when we were allowed for a few weeks, as York fans know too well.
Do we have any more questions? I think we've got to finish. We've been told we have to finish. So if there's any more questions, I believe you may find him flogging books at the bookstore downstairs.
If they've got any.
And he might sign them if you ask nicely. If that's your first question, and then there'll be chances to maybe ask him some more there as well. But thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.